Hey y'all, Scott here, and EW! Always keep a frying pan handy. You never know when a 7 out of 10 game is gonna strike, because obviously all those games are hot trash. I personally only play the highest quality games there are. So let's take a look at the greatest games of all time, according to Metacritic. Yes, today we'll be looking at all the games with a 97 or above on Metacritic and seeing if they either hold up today or at the very least deserve to be on the list. Just a reminder, Metacritic's highest scoring games list doesn't include games before the N64 era, so sadly older games aren't included here. Yeah, I didn't make the list. Also, this is more of a first impressions on these games, not a comprehensive review. Basically, do I like what I played and do I think it deserves to be rated so highly? Thank God this made the list. I was gonna go into my emergency Scott's pissed kit if NFL 2K1 didn't get some representation. I don't own this game, but if it ain't Madden 08, I ain't having it. Perfect Dark was a spiritual successor to GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64, one of the most groundbreaking games of all time due to popularizing first-person shooters on a home console, both in terms of single-player and multiplayer. Since Nintendo lacked the James Bond license at the turn of the millennium, Rare decided to make their own original IP based on the foundation they created with the original GoldenEye. So let's check it out. Jesus Christ, I have to use this thing. Pardon me, it's just difficult to go back to shooters on the N64 these days due to the lack of 2 analog sticks. The game actually allows you to use 2 controllers at the same time to get dual sticks, but I don't actually have 2 controllers, or even the expansion pack needed to play Perfect Dark, so... let's look at the Xbox Live Arcade version of the game. It's basically an enhanced port. It's the same game, but with better textures, models, etc. But nobody dared to touch the animations and voice work. They had to be preserved. And then I spent 30 minutes wandering around the first level not knowing what to do. The mission objective is to just gain entrance to the laboratory. Sounds simple enough, but to me, these levels feel like a maze. Environmental assets are reused throughout the entire level, and doors blend into the rest of the walls, which add up to not knowing where I am or where to go. Based on the level of difficulty you choose, you have different objectives to complete, which is actually a cool concept. If you're a better agent, you'd obviously have more to do than usual. But that leads to more confusion, like, I think I'm going in the right direction, but lo and behold, there's a section here that's only useful on higher difficulties, and I have to find the direction to go for my difficulty. Playing this game feels like walking around in complete darkness. No idea where I am, where to go, and waving my arms around helplessly trying to proceed. I still think this game is super impressive by N64 standards though. Shoving graphics of this caliber and all these voices on a Nintendo 64 cartridge is pretty stellar, and the multiplayer is definitely where the fun lies. But first impressions on the campaign were frustrating. What used to be groundbreaking now feels really dated and headache-inducing to me personally. Halo followed by everybody's favorite subtitle, Combat Evolved. And dude, for a launch title in 2001 for the original Xbox, this thing is crazy! Halo back in the day was commended for having a top-of-the-line story, great single-player, and sublime multiplayer. Top that with the fact the Xbox launched with it, and no wonder this game is on the list. Nowadays, it's a good game, albeit graphically dated. Your ship gets attacked and you have to escape, all while doing the whole not dying thing.
Security! Intruders in cryo 2! Please don't! Sam! Sam!
Thank God this game gives you incentive to eliminate the enemy. This game's alright nowadays. It's definitely aged in a few aspects, but overall, it's still a good game. I like this way more than Perfect Dark, I will say that for a fact. Graphically, for 2001, it looks pretty good, but these days I feel like these character models are supposed to be telling me what my fortune is at some rundown arcade. Overall, quite the amazing launch title at the time, and the epitome of a system seller. No, pretty good game. Grand Theft Auto 3 was one of the most groundbreaking games when it was released. Oh God, why am I playing this on the 360? You see, Xbox games are backwards compatible with the Xbox 360, and hopefully you notice that asterisk because problems vary from game to game. GTA 3 apparently has an echo effect on the graphics. Great. Anyways, this was the first 3D entry in the Grand Theft Auto franchise, which was at the time top-down only. Of course, being able to murder policemen in 3D led to controversy, which no doubt led to greater sales. And yeah, it's Grand Theft Auto. This is the blueprint for the rest of the series, definitely way more basic than newer entries though. But sometimes, simpler is better. Not here, I'd take Vice City or San Andreas over 3 any day, but it still does have its charm. It's still an open world sandbox, and the fun lies within going crazy and doing whatever. At least for me, GTA has always been a do whatever, I don't care kind of game. I'd rather play other entries in the franchise, but 3 was a monumentous step not only for the series, but gaming in general. Does it hold up well? I'd say so. The only thing that feels specifically dated is the presentation, both graphics and sound. Other than that, it's still Grand Theft Auto and it plays well. So I've never fully gotten into a Metroid game, probably because when I actually had money to spend on games, no new Metroid games were coming out. But I still have a few titles from the series past, so let's finally see if I can get into a Metroid game with Metroid Prime, the first 3D game in the franchise. After a long hiatus, the Metroid franchise made its triumphant return with this game. At the time, the game generated controversy from fans because Metroid in first person? How could it be? We're playing the version included on the Metroid Prime trilogy on the Wii, and this game is amazing! It's just so good. You start off all powered up, exploring, having a great time, and after you defeat the Parasite Queen, Meta Ridley attacks and your suit gets downgraded. You're completely weak, but that gives you incentive to continue on to regain your abilities. This game just plays so fluidly, and it's so much fun to control and explore your surroundings. It's impressive for a GameCube game too. Yeah, this is a re-release on the Wii, but the GameCube original is not far off at all. This is a must-play, honestly. Everybody find a copy of Metroid Prime and give it a shot. You won't be disappointed. I don't actually have Pro Skater 3. I have so many others, but not 3. What unfortunate. Next up is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, a game that I obviously hate. Hey, I went on for 7 minutes on why it isn't perfect. If I say anything good about the game, I'd obviously be a giant hypocrite. To that I say, that wasn't me, guys. I swear my YouTube channel was hacked. Now that I'm able to say some good things, this game is phenomenal! It does to the open world genre what Ocarina of Time did to 3D adventure games and what the original Zelda did to 2D adventure games. This world is filled to the brim with secrets. Every time you discover something, it feels like you discovered it. You did that yourself. It feels like a legitimate adventure. Hyrule is such a fantastic area to just explore, roam around, screw around, it's amazing. The puzzles, both in the shrines and the divine beasts, are awesome. They also invoke a sense of singular discovery due to how many ways a puzzle can be solved. The art style is wonderful. The soundtrack is completely subdued, but when it gets going, oh boy, it gets going. Breath of the Wild is absolutely fantastic and deserves to be on this list hard. Of course, it does have some problems here and there, but those are just minor annoyances and an experience that is worth everybody's time. Grand Theft Auto 5, one of the most popular games of all time, and rightfully so because this is a fantastic Grand Theft Auto game. It's so fun and beautiful. It took the fun-filled nature from the old GTAs and the abundance of activities to do from the newer ones and mashed them together into the lovely murder-filled rampage it was always meant to be. This is actually the first Grand Theft Auto game I fully beat. I usually just get bored playing the standard game and just popped in GTA to screw around, but with Grand Theft Auto 5, I actually liked playing through the story, and on top of that, screwing around was a hoot and a half. This is fantastic. This and Breath of the Wild are the cream of the crop when it comes to open world games. Let's just say I have plans to cover this game in the near future, but for the time being, Super Mario Galaxy is one of the greatest games of all time and holds every right to be on this list. It takes the 3D Mario formula and does something completely new with it while retaining the feel of 3D Mario. Really, everything a new entry in a classic franchise should do. It's also Mario in space. I was sold at the very beginning. It's so great, I'm debating nailing the shirt I bought the game into the wall. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is often considered one of the greatest sequels of all time, and considering it's the sequel to my favorite game of all time should inspire me to beat it. Nope, Galaxy 2 is basically just more of Galaxy. Imagine if Galaxy received an expansion that was the size of a new game. Personally, I prefer Galaxy's heavier emphasis on story. That's funny. Alright, by that I mean, it was a perfect Mario story. It was the same damn thing as the last 40 games, but it put a new spin on things and gave everything an epic feeling. Galaxy 2 throws away everything and acts as a sort of retelling of the original, now with more straightforward levels. Now I'd say this is fine. Either you prefer Galaxy 1 with its larger level designs and more epic feel, or you prefer Galaxy 2 with its more linear, classic Mario style level designs with a more just get right to it feel. But regardless, if you like one, you're gonna find enjoyment in the other. Soul Calibur, one of the definitive fighting games of the late 90s. This is the Xbox Live Arcade version, and on top of that, the free trial, because you can't spell I'm too cheap to buy the full version just for this episode, so I'll just play the free trial without free trial. And wow, this game is actually pretty great. It's really fun, even for a novice player such as myself. It's pretty simple to pick up and play, and it's just straight up fun. I wouldn't say an absolutely amazing experience nowadays, but a really fun fighting game. This is truly a game that pro players and casual players can both enjoy, and that's something I think the fighting game scene needs more of. Really? This did better than Grand Theft Auto 5? Well, Grand Theft Auto 4 was huge when it released, the first GTA in high definition on much more powerful consoles, taking on a darker tone. Of course this was one of the biggest games of all time. I don't like this one that much. Alright, get this. GTA 4 is a decent romp of a sandbox game. I mean, it has everything you'd want out of a GTA game at the time, but there's a few things that just ruin it for me. The world feels a bit empty to me. All I really remember from this game was the city setting with barely any buildings I could actually enter. It felt kind of like a city full of billboards and nothing but. It just ends up feeling more like like an HD version of GTA 3, and at least in GTA 3 it had fun with itself, like running over people in that game sounds like you're going to town on some tomatoes. With GTA 5, it's so colorful and pleasing to look at, with loads of variety within its visuals. GTA 4 comes from a time in which every game was trying to nail the smearing the Mona Lisa in the mud look. Brown and gray. As a colorblind citizen, thank you, but I prefer GTA 5's more colorful style. And may I introduce the worst aspect of GTA 4, the driving. The cars are so stiff. It's gross. These cars should handle like they did in previous games or 5, or if you want a more broad way of putting it, like an arcade racer. These controls feel stiff like a simulation racer. If you like simulation racing games, cool! But GTA works so much better with smoother, less realistic controls. Do you really want GTA to feel realistic or fun? And spoilers, there is a correct answer. I feel like GTA 4 did so well because it was that generation's GTA for a while. I played a ton of it, but only because it was the only Grand Theft Auto on the 360 at the time. Definitely far from my favorite. You know, I've always heard great things about the Tony Hawk games, but never gave them a try. I may not have Pro Skater 3, but I do own Pro Skater 2, so let's give it a shot. This is the version released on the original Xbox, Pro Skater 2X. It's mainly a port of that game plus levels from the first Pro Skater with a few aspects taken from Pro Skater 3, and my God, is this game fun! It's a skateboarding game that's a mix between an arcade game and a collectathon. You skate around doing tricks, which leads to getting more points. You can also explore the stage and find certain collectibles or complete certain tasks. Doing these tasks and earning points leads to getting more money, which can be spent on new tricks and also unlock new stages. This is such a fun game, no wonder people ate this stuff up back in the day. One of the best games of all time though? Here's the thing, this game is great fun, but I haven't played enough of it to truly see the greatest game of all time hiding within it. I see a really fun game, but I think that's pushing it a bit. However, it's way better than some of the other games on this list, so I'll say it deserves to be here. Score-wise though, I'd personally put it in the lower 90s from what I played. Unanimously considered the greatest game of all time, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is the beloved, groundbreaking, definitive entry in the long-lasting Zelda franchise. That's alright. Is it good? Yeah, it's Ocarina of Time, of course it's good. In fact, I'll go a step further and say it's great. Now, I feel like other games have surpassed it in terms of overall quality, but when you look at the long list of games released over time, it simply makes sense for Ocarina of Time to be widely considered the best of them all. It took the game countless lauded as perfect and did a classic Super Mario 64 to it, went 3D on us, and captured the hearts and minds of millions. I've stated before, I love the Zelda franchise, I just don't play a lot of the games. I love so many things about all of these games, they're just hard for me to totally invest my time in. They're not the easiest games to pick up where you left off if you stopped playing like a month ago. And yeah, I haven't beaten Ocarina, but I plan on fixing that one of these days, and I can say this is an expertly crafted game. Also, check Mido out, this is completely improbable. Man, what a waterfall of quality. Who knew video games could be so good? And I'm so happy right now. I think I'm gonna take my new Thesaurus on a test drive and see what the antonym for good is just for funsies. I have to look at the worst games of all time next. I'm fucked. Hey y'all, Scott here, and I'm on the verge of a little thing I like to call a breakthrough. You see, after I was tasked with doing taste tests on the worst games of all time according to Metacritic, I thought, there must be somebody behind this many games that bad. And after extensively looking through this Sunday's paper, I've narrowed it down to one suspect. Mr. Scoliosis. The world-renowned mastermind himself. Problem is, nobody's ever tracked him down. And I'd have to do that to get down to the bottom of what made these games so bad.
Ah, my f***ing back.
That must be him! Yeah, it turns out those games were bad due to mismanagement, not because of some guy with a curved spine. Yeah, today we're looking at the worst of the worst on Metacritic. Now before we start off, there are two separate lists on Metacritic detailing the worst games out there. One accounts for games with more than 7 reviews and the other doesn't. We're looking at the list that includes games with less than 7, as that means more or lesser quality for me. Also, these aren't comprehensive reviews of these games, just first impressions. Yaris was an Xbox Live Arcade game that was a promotional tie-in with the Toyota Yaris line of cars. It was delisted in 2008, a year after debuting on the market, and for good reasons. It's a racing game with a gun. You shoot MP3 players floating around as you race. I can't play it due to not being available for download anymore, but regardless, excellent way to start things off. 101 in 1 Explosive Megamix. At first glance may seem like a deal and a half. I always make sure to pick up anything marked 101 for 1, so when I saw this after searching for 101 in 1 Explosive Megamix on the Wii Shop channel, I knew I just had to pick it up. And this is one of the worst experiences I've had in quite a while, which is actually quite nice. This game made me realize that I have a pretty solid life if I'm getting angry at a $7 WiiWare game from 2011. 101-in-1 Explosive Megamix is a port of a DS game of the same name. It's a collection of lazily made mini-games that take advantage of the DS stylus, except now we're on the Wii. This game is already incredibly mediocre if you're playing it with a stylus, but using a Wii remote as a pointer makes this game way more frustrating and difficult. The pointing functionality of the Wii remote just isn't as accurate as a stylus, and with these games being made with stylus play in mind, these feel incredibly awkward and just not fun to control. Like, who wants to play a basketball game on the Wii like this? NRA Varmint Hunter is a hunting game released for Microsoft Windows. I can't play it. It's just a poorly made hunting game where you shoot gophers or whatever. And judging by this game's intro, this game is f***ing ruthless. Orc Slayer on the PlayStation 4. This is phenomenal. I really don't have much to say about this game. It's basically just everything you'd expect out of a bad budget indie game. I mean, it's much more playable than other games, but I just got bored of it after 5 minutes. Definitely not the worst thing out there, but it's far from good. The Letter is a Wii U eShop game that failed to reach its funding goal on Indiegogo, but they released it anyway! This is a horror game without the horror. Actually, this game is terrifying when you analyze it all. A beach ball? Spinning on its own? I gotta get out of here! You just have to find specific objects to advance to the next stage. You also find letters scattered across the levels, giving you some crazy lore. The controls are incredibly floaty, and the game never goes in for a scare. You see, it has all the elements of a horror game, but with no climax, no jump scares, no legitimately creepy things. When the game tries to be creepy, it just ends up making you feel bad for it. Here we have a beating heart, and don't worry, the shit in your pants is completely justified. I actually beat this game back in the day for funsies, but when playing it recently, I couldn't bother getting past the second stage. It's actually really easy to get lost and just run around in circles due to how dark it is, which is pretty sad. This game is around 20 minutes long, and I didn't even really feel like looking up a walkthrough, which you're definitely gonna need. The ending of the game, though, is out of this world. You enter a medical testing facility on the quest to find your father, and you just wait there for a few seconds, and blam blam blam, you're on an island, and it was all a dream. Hey, Twist Nation, do I got a game for you? Ride to Hell Retribution is a game made by dads trying to act cool in front of their angsty sons. It starts off with a cutscene intro / tutorial mixtape where we see a montage of our main character Jake riding his bike, and then flash into a gameplay segment, then flash back to bike riding, then flash back to gameplay. This guy means business. What an intro! After blowing all expectations out of the water, you reconcile with your father.
You look like shit, Jake.
Thank God this game is self-aware. Now I don't need to comment on how the visuals look like if arthritis could code. We get some good old-fashioned family bonding, and Jake decides he's had enough of just watching a movie's credits.
Swear to God, I'd rather be polishing boots than sit through this crap.
The dad pisses Jake's brother Mikey off, and Jake has to go after him due to the dangers that awaits outside. And then Mikey gets his throat slit by these guys.
This is like a skinny little old baby cow, ain't it?
Thanks, what a nice threat. But yeah, your brother dies, and a reaction happens. I guess afterwards you seek to avenge your brother's death, I don't know, and drive off, which is a painstakingly long section for what it's worth. No enemies, no purpose for the long length, just get to the destination. You get into a fight, and after a few noogies and raspberries, the guy finally gives you what you want. We then have to find this next guy in a motel, but I end up killing this guy who's fighting with this girl. And immediately, we're rewarded with sick intercourse, clothing and all. After a few noogies and raspberries, we have to catch up to the guy hiding in the motel, and we get another driving section. This game was everything I wanted it to be. It's garbage, but it's definitely something you really should give a try. It deserves a place on this list, but is incredible in almost every other way. Elf Bowling 1 and 2. Solid concept for a game. Of course, these 6 simple syllables attract most people. Absolutely not worthy of being on an actual video game cartridge licensed by Nintendo, though. This game can be summed up by just saying, you press A. That's all you do. In Elf Bowling 1, you just press A at the right time to bowl in a specific area. And man, this thing is disorienting and just doesn't have good physics. Like, a lot of the time, it just doesn't feel like you should have gotten a gutter ball. Elf Bowling 2, isn't bowling, it's shuffleboard, but with approximately 90% more dwarf ass. You play against your longtime rival Dingle in a battle that goes on far too long. This really shouldn't have made the cut to be released on a cartridge. This is the kind of flash game your uncle emails you. Actually, that's exactly what this game was, and the GBA and Nintendo DS versions were unauthorized ports of the game. Overall, I mean, this game blows, but it's exactly what it says it is. It's Elf Bowling 1 and 2. Unearthed is an episodic game that never made it past episode 1. It originally released back in 2013, and first things first, this game knows how to get the standard Unearthed player excited. Yes! 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 How many times can I say I'm sold until you get the point? This thing looks stellar. But let's get down to the brass tacks here. This is a complete rip-off of Uncharted. At least they saw the growing market for cinematic action adventure games that begin with Un. The difference is Uncharted has beautiful environments, great writing, fun characters, and entertaining gameplay. This game feels like if Uncharted was released on the PlayStation 1 and was coated with waffle iron. The game starts off with your character limping all over the place, while the game stops you abruptly every 4 grams of movement you take to explain something that's relatively trivial. I got to shooting and ew. I'm playing the Mac version, and for some reason they decided to make aiming a right click on the mouse and shooting a left click. All Macs ship with a trackpad or a magic mouse, which you can't right click and left click simultaneously. So time to crack out a third-party mouse. We trudge on to the hand-to-hand combat section, and why is the scroll wheel an input? We have all these keys on the keyboard, yet they decide to use the scroll wheel. That basically describes one of the larger problems with this game. Clunk. This game is the farthest thing from intuitive to play, which is emphasized even more by the fact that this is a pretty simple game. Definitely play it with a controller if possible. The game then actively tries to gain my sympathy, and then
Now, what would you do if you were me?
give up. We then get some solid story, and your sister decides to explain your mission right before you do it, instead of, you know, explaining it when she asks you to go out to the desert with her. But whatever, let's finally get to the meat of the game, which is Uncharted, but about 77 pegs worse. Climbing is one of the clunkiest things I've ever controlled in a video game here. In Uncharted, you don't have to think about it. Here, it's an active struggle to move anywhere. I have to find 4 keys to unlock this door, and get this, I did. We then find myself just walking forward, and looks like I need a torch to even move into the darkness. This stuff is so dark, it's blocking me from going forward. I have to sidle across this, and clunk strikes again. This is just embarrassing. I come across a boarded door, and I obviously have to crawl under it. Jesus! After getting to the tomb, the game finds it incredibly integral to stop you dead in your tracks to make sure you listen to this dialogue. I then get to control an RC car to activate pressure points to help me cross some gaps. Clunk strikes again as I accidentally jump off the platform, and I give up. Yeah, this is the epitome of a sour game. Lame visuals, bad voiceover, stock music, clunky controls, a blatant ripoff. Get this thing away from me. Family Party 30 Great Games Obstacle Arcade. First off, kudos to the marketing team. It's like they know what consumers want in a title. This was released near the Wii U's launch, and oh boy do we have a stinker on our hands. This is a party game, of course, and by the second minigame I shut this off hard. This game does what I think many Wii U games painfully do to a fault, which is use the Wii Remote and gamepad by trading them off in between. Use the Wii Remote for this game, now use the gamepad. That just gets so inconvenient and tiring. Don't make me constantly swap controllers, that's just not fun. On top of that, the game went from a Wii Remote minigame to a gamepad minigame to a game that required the nunchuck to be plugged in and refused to let me do anything until I did so. This feels like a generic party game that was in development for the Wii and immediately shifted over to the Wii U when that was on the way in. And also, these minigames blow. I'm not one to immediately write off party games. They have their worth and can be tons of fun, but this is one of the worst excuses for pretty much anything. The game that required the nunchuck really got to me. You have to shoot at ghosts. It requires the nunchuck for the analog stick, and you have to move the stick to where the ghost is and waggle the Wii Remote to shoot it. Wow, it's like I'm really there! This is stupid. Why not just use the pointer of the Wii Remote and the B button to shoot at ghosts? Instead, this game made me get up and find a nunchuck for a minute-long minigame. This is miserable. This game needs to go lay down. Finally, we end off with the creme de la creme of stupid f***ing garbage. Big Rigs Off-the-Road Racing, released in 2003 for Microsoft Windows. A bit more exciting a reveal the first time around. Yeah, we have a bit of a problem on our hand. I simply can't go without playing this game, as it's the worst of all time. So we have to turn to an unofficial Mac port of the game. Problem is, doesn't run very well. I don't think that's going to affect my opinion of the game, however. Big Rigs is a racing game with everybody's favorite form of transportation, some big rigs. And it's completely unfinished. You can drive through everything. Your opponent doesn't even move at all. Now this is what I call some positive life lessons with Big Rigs. Easily teach young children that it doesn't matter if you win or lose, it's about the sick nasty glitches in store for you. This game is a masterpiece of trash. If you go in reverse, you oddly go faster than you would in drive, and on top of that, just give the left or right arrow keys some lovin', and finally, a driving game with some personality. Listen, I think Big Rigs deserves to definitely be on this list, and it definitely could be considered the worst game of all time. I mean, it's not finished. But this is more art than it is bad. This is the fun kind of bad that only legends have spoken of. 101-in-1 Explosive Megamix and Family Party are the boring, frustrating kind of bad. This and Ride to Hell are games I think everybody has to experience. Wow, oh wow, who knew video games could be so bad? Hopefully those games didn't affect my sanity too much. Yeah, those games are pretty bad.